Hello and welcome to On Second Thought, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. On July 3rd, 2019, I released the episode of And the Runner-Up Is on the 1963 Best Picture race, where we discussed how the West was won as the likely runner-up that lost Best Picture to Tom Jones. But on second thought, what if the runner-up was really Lilies of the Field?
Sing it over, amen, 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 amen. See the baby wrapped in the manger on Christmas morning. See him in the temple talking with the elders who marveled at his wisdom.
Hello, and welcome back to On Second Thought, where we discuss another Best Picture nominee that we did not cover as the runner-up on the main show, and discuss whether it may have actually been the runner-up. I'm your host, Kevin Jacobson, and we are revisiting 1963 today. And on the main show, I said that How the West Was Won was the runner-up to Tom Jones, but today we're discussing if it actually could have been a different film, and that film is Lilies of the Field. And my guest today feels like it's been a minute since we've talked on the show. She's been on the main show and these bonus episodes a number of times in the past. So, I think the last time we talked may have actually been when we talked about The Big House, the year of the third Academy Awards, and that was way back in January of last year. So it truly has been a while.
Yeah.
Podcaster for Citizen Dame and The Watch and Talk. Great writer in all of these different outlets, including I recently saw Variety. Let's celebrate that. Welcome back to the show, Karen Peterson.
Hello. Thank you. It's so nice to be back.
You're back. How's it been, Karen? We've already talked offline, but update the listeners. How have you been?
Oh man, I've been doing great. I've been just kind of branching out a little bit and just experiencing a little bit of life as a freelancer. I've never done that in my career, and no particular reason. It just felt like a fun new challenge. I still have a full-time job, so I have a major safety net. This is not my career path, but it's just a fun thing that I get to do on the side, and just living the experience of getting to pitch articles and have them actually be accepted is very exciting.
Yeah. Well, you're a very talented writer, and I love talking to you about these things, so I'm truly very excited to have you back, and especially to talk about this fun, breezy little film.
I am so excited to talk about this movie. It's such a good one.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right in then. So, Lilies of the Field, it is a comedy, drama, some would say dramedy, about a man named Homer Smith, who is an itinerant worker who stumbles upon this group of nuns who come from Germany and Austria and Hungary. Most of them can't speak English, and the Mother Superior, Maria, persuades him to do a quick roofing fix, and they don't end up paying him. Instead, they make him dinner, and that's pretty much his payment. And eventually, he's also persuaded to help build a chapel for them after finding out how much that they sort of sacrificed to get to this place, and he kind of sees it as his mission to help them. And the whole community gets involved, and also there's kind of this sort of simmering conflict between him and the Mother Superior character, who's very stubborn and likes things her own way. That's where most of the conflict is, I would say. But otherwise, pretty low stakes movie. So the film was directed by Ralph Nelson and written by James Poe, who was adapting it from the novel of the same name by William Edmund Barrett. It stars the late great Sidney Poitier as Homer, Lilia Scala as Mother Maria, Lisa Mann, Issa Crino, Francesca Jarvis, Pamela Branch, and Stanley Adams. And Lilies of the Field made $7 million at the box office. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, winning one, a very noteworthy one, but not Best Picture. So, Karen, you were telling me offline that this is something you hadn't seen for a while. Just curious maybe what your take was when you first saw it and now how you feel about this film.
It's hard to remember exactly what my take was when I first saw it. I liked it. I mean, it was years ago. And, I mean, it's impossible not to like a movie with Sidney Poitier in the cast.
Yeah.
Wait, is it impossible? I'm trying to think. It might be. There might be one out there. But it's a really sweet movie. It's very funny at certain times. But I think this time around, I actually just watching it as a much more grown-up person and experiencing a different world than I thought I was living in 20 years ago or whatever. I don't know. I picked up on it's definitely still very cute and sweet, but I think I feel like I picked up on some things that didn't resonate with me the same way as when I was younger watching this. This came out in 1963. Sidney Poitier, first Oscar for this one. And considering the time period, you've got these German nuns, like you mentioned, who don't speak English. You've got this black man who just kind of is a free spirit, roams where he feels like it. And then he ends up in this very small town, and it's, these German nuns, this man, and then some Mexican people. And it's just like this kind of just such an interesting melting pot of people. There's no judgment. There's some expectations and there's some frustrations about things, but none of it really ultimately has anything to do with race. People are just kind of learning about each other and learning to work with each other. And for 1963, I realized that's actually kind of a bit of a progressive movie for a lot of reasons. So
yeah. I think it is, and I do think in some ways, maybe we'll talk about it later on, it is a little safe in what it's doing, but we'll talk that out.
Definitely, yeah.
So for me, I just have to acknowledge that in some ways this kind of feels like a spiritual sequel to Come to the Stable, which I famously covered in my 1949 episode. Unfortunately, there are no nuns playing tennis in this or driving jeeps. But it feels very much in the same sort of like cinematic universe where just like in Come to the Stable, this is all about nuns who want to build something for their community, and then it's the other people finding it in their hearts to help them out. And there aren't too many like grander ambitions beyond that, and that's fine, and I think in that respect, maybe it's not really anything too new plot-wise. It's not really trying to reinvent the wheel. But I do think the one element that really does elevate this film beyond just being a nice, standard kind of religious movie is just the presence of Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely could... I actually wrote, when I was watching it, I wrote some notes, and I actually wrote, this is almost spiritual porn, because it's like, it's so much of like, especially with the nuns and their faith, and which is admirable. And, it starts with the Mother Superior. She is so sure that Homer has been sent to help them, and she just won't let up. She won't give up on that. And so when he's trying to leave, she's just like, no, you've still got work to do because you were sent here to help us out. And I don't know, I think the fact that it is a really simple premise is part of why it's so effective. I think that it didn't need to be overly complicated, especially because you have Sidney Poitier, who really does just command so much attention in large and small ways throughout the film. And there are some just really sweet and tender moments, and there are some others that are actually like a little bit, I don't know, just kind of stop you. Like when he calls the Mother Maria, when he says that they're all being like Hitler, and it was just like, whoa, that's crossing a big line, and he knew it as soon as he said it,
Yeah, right.
And so there are just moments like that I think wouldn't have worked as well if it had been anybody but Poitier.
Exactly. And he's just so charismatic, and
Mm-hmm.
just so like just bursting with energy in a way. And even
Yeah.
though the film doesn't, I don't know if it really spends a whole lot of time really digging into like who he is as a person and like a psychological way, like where he's come from and all that. You do still get some of that depth of who this character is just in the way that he carries himself. Like
Yeah.
he's been around the block, he's really inhabiting that sort of jack of all trades sensibility. And you do see it in those really simple kind of scenes, like when he's watching the nuns practicing their English on the phonograph, and then he ends up teaching them. There's just something about the energy he brings to a scene like that, which is this sense like I have to teach them on this fundamental level and I have to be patient with them. But like he's also very expressive with his gestures and like picking up on how the nuns are receiving what he's saying and giving like these knowing looks so that we sort of are on his side, but not really like mugging for the camera. It's just like this sort of delicate balance.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's part of why he's so great with this because we don't know much about Homer. We don't know where he came from. We don't know where he was going when he stopped, and we don't really need to because
Right.
he, like you say, is so expressive and so engaging that I mean, we can imagine any sort of backstory for him that we want, but he also, what we do learn about him is that he really does just kind of roll with things. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get all caught up in, well, I mean, obviously he's trying to get out of there. He wants to be on his way, but he also just kind of says, "Oh, well, all right, I'm here.
Yeah,
Let's just enjoy the moment." He has a lot of just living in the moment.
exactly. Right. And I will also say this in terms of his win. I mean, Karen, you know this just from being in the awards world like I am. There are sometimes these instances where someone is winning an Oscar because of the character and maybe how it's written. And, the actor might bring their own take on the character and everything, but it's sort of like, you're halfway there when you're playing like Freddie Mercury or Judy Garland.
Right.
Or if the character is written in a particularly showy way, like a lot of Woody Allen's movies kind of are like that, where it's just inherently kind of showy. But this is actually for me an example of an actor who's really earning their win because of exactly what he is bringing to it. It's
Hmm.
not a role that was necessarily written to win someone an Oscar.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at a lot of Poitier's other work, this doesn't feel like all of those films. So he's not
Yeah.
someone who just like played the same character over and over and over again. And I think that showed like this win and then, some subsequent roles and wins and nominations and things, I think really just show his versatility and like I feel like Lilies of the Field gives you a glimpse of his off-screen behind the scenes personality a little bit more than other things are because
Mm.
he really is just this like down to earth fun-loving guy, not this serious buttoned up person. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I never met Sidney Poitier myself, but from so many things that I've read about him, I get the sense that there was something kind of in between there with
Yeah.
this and that more straight laced
Mm-hmm.
and yeah.
Yeah, he seems like someone who really brought people together, and
Hmm.
you just see him in this movie just getting along pretty well with everyone, even people who he has to maybe win over, like the whoever it is, the contractor guy who calls him
Right,
boy.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
still is able to win him over, and you could definitely see a lot of Sydney in that.
And he wins him over just by being a nice and very capable guy.
Right.
I mean, he talks his way into a job
Mm-hmm.
because of what he knows, and then the guy's just like, "Well, if you don't know what you say you know, you're gonna be out of here in 15 minutes." And
Mm-hmm.
then, a little while later, the man's offering him a major contract to build a
Yeah.
freeway. It's just like And I mean, this is just who he is. Really, he's able to win people over. The nuns too. I mean, they love him instantly because of that scene at the dinner table, because he just doesn't get caught up in worries or cares.
Right.
Being carefree really makes him somebody that people are drawn to.
Right. And I mean, in terms of just the character, we do get the revelation later on that when he's talking about how he always wanted to be an architect because he
Yeah.
loves building things, but growing up, he didn't really have the education to do that. And it led him to sort of be this drifter. So, yeah, you could definitely see one of the reasons why he was interested in building this giant chapel for the nuns, even if they're
Mhm.
not paying him anything, you know. But I
And
think,
why it was so important to him that he
hmm
wanted to do it himself. Because it's like,
yes,
if you don't catch that, then when he's just like, I wanted to build it myself, sounds like someone that's just kind of having a little bit of a tantrum.
right,
Just like, oh, I'm being spoiled right now. But that wasn't, it really did mean something to him to get to have that opportunity.
yeah,
And to then have to share that workload, at first it seems he's upset about it, but then it ends up being something that brings the community together even more, and that includes him. Like, he starts to feel like he's part of that community too.
yeah. And it's like, I think there's also, the part of him that just wants to be a good person, and you have all these moments where he's like talking to God and he's referencing his own religion as a Baptist. And even though there are these differences with how the nuns are approaching their own faith, you do see this sort of shared belief in doing the right thing. And I think that's really what the film's goal is, I would say, is to sort of show that we might have our differences, but we can come together for this sort of common goal. And again, is very fitting within Sydney's own public image as the premier black movie star at that time, where he
Mm-hmm.
was not presented in a stereotypical way, at this time when civil rights really became this national issue, and like mainstream white America couldn't really go on just ignoring it anymore. It's, you have this black movie star who is shown to be an everyman, like in this film.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's portrayed in a more saintly manner in other films, which can have its own issues, but he's all about being a decent person. And I think just sort of having dignity, like obviously people talk about the moment in the heat of the night when he gets slapped and then he slaps the white guy back, and just how
Mm-hmm.
radical it was to see that and see him standing up for himself. And again, you see the same thing with him calling the contractor boy after he calls
Right.
him boy. It's just so great, and it shows his confidence in himself, which just makes him so appealing to watch. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it also helps that even though there isn't like a romantic element to the film, I do think he is framed in a way that is kind of desirable and like a true like leading man.
Definitely, definitely.
So,
There is a lot of that. And I think that, just going back to what I was saying about this
hmm
being a fairly progressive film, it's like, if we look at this from a 2022 perspective, I mean, it's diversity, it's inclusion, it's stuff that we still need more of, but are more used to seeing now. Like,
right.
we don't necessarily think so much about, you know, this type of a cast coming together, being assembled for this type of a story without commenting on it. And it's just, yeah, that's just the cast they've put together. That's great. But for 1963, that actually does say a lot. The fact that they don't ever directly address it. There are little, like you mentioned,
hmm
the boy part, but there's not a direct commentary on race or gender or any of that in this, but it's all present and it's all important.
Definitely. I do, while we're here, I do sort of want to comment on this thing that I do think is valid to talk about, which is the fact that they are not paying him. I know I keep going back to
Hmm.
this,
No,
but
that is definitely something that matters. Yeah.
you know, it's like they're all expecting this sort of unpaid labor of this black man, and depending on your interpretation, sort of guilting him maybe into it by like
Hmm.
kind of quoting these Bible passages at him. Probably not the healthiest dynamic. And I don't know how much it really gets explored. Like you said, it doesn't really delve into those things too much. But I do think
Yeah.
there is like a slight tension there, to the film's credit. It's not like it's totally ignored, but I do think it is sort of, when we look back from the 2022 lens, it's a problem, I would say.
It definitely is. And I think that one of the ways that they try to mitigate that as being a racial issue or a reference to slavery is the fact that Mother Maria continually says, I prayed for a man to come and you're the one that came.
Yeah.
And so they're basically trying to make the point that like it didn't matter who, like we just need this work done, the Lord wills it. But to your point, yeah, he's doing work that he needs to be paid for, and they're expecting him to just do it for free. And of course, he should want to. That's their mindset. Um, I, for me, watching it, I think that they do a good job
Mm-hmm.
of the the filmmakers and Poitier too do a good job of making you feel on his side. Like they are really trying to take advantage of him. He deserves to be paid for this work. And maybe that is me just watching it in 2022 and going like, yeah, they need to pay him. They shouldn't expect him to do that for free, of course. And maybe, when this came out, maybe people were thinking, but it is the Lord's work and he should just do it for free. But
Right.
it's
Of
not
course.
his religion. It's not,
Yeah.
it's very different situation. So I don't know how I should have maybe done some more research on that as far as how that specifically was interpreted in the time period. But I would hope that the point was that they were intentionally trying to make you feel from his perspective. Like he is being
Yeah.
taken advantage of. And no matter who that was, you should want to be on his side.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the film does a great job of just making you always feel like you're on his side, and he does have agency.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yeah,
like
he
he's
can leave
trapped
anytime
there.
he wants. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he tries to leave like a few different times in the beginning, but
They're just very persuasive.
they definitely are. It's hard not to be. There are a lot of sweet nuns in there.
Yeah.
But I also, part of me did kind of start to wonder about his motivations over time, even though, like we talked about, like, he has this conviction to him as well, as much as the nuns do. But it's sort of like he's putting up with a lot with Mother Maria, and I get that he likes what he's doing because he wants to be an architect, but at a certain point I sort of felt like they're really kind of pushing a little too far, and we do get that little bit of an argument that they have where all he's doing is bringing back more food for them to eat, and she takes issue with that.
Yeah.
So there's that.
And then he leaves. He does
Yes,
leave, and
he
he's
does
gone
leave.
for about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And when he comes back, it's just kind of like, never mind. I missed you guys. I'm here. Let's
Yeah.
do this thing. It's
Right.
not like where did he go during that time? What was he doing? He
That's-
walked away from his other job too, the one that
Mhm.
was actually paying him. He just left, and he
Valid
did such
point.
a good job for that guy. Like, what job could you just leave for 3 weeks, not say a word, and they're like, your job is still here. Just call me when
Right.
you get back.
Right. Thank you for listening to this preview of On Second Thought, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup-is and become a patron. Only $3 a month will get you access to bonus episodes, a Slack channel, and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.